Well, hello, everyone, and welcome in once again to JW World News. Boy, we've been doing this program now for 18 years. Never missed a Saturday night. We are here because you are here. It's just absolutely amazing. I'm just going to mute some people here, so just hang on with us. So anyways, my name's Rick Farron. I'm coming to you from the apostate capital of the world, and we do have a lot of apostates up here. I'm in good company. And don't you worry, I always tell you, there's going to be a lot of apostates coming to your neck of the woods very, very soon. Well, I'm glad you came in tonight to our program. Just to give you an idea, here, you see the little duck here? The duck comes down. Now, if that duck comes down, it comes down because somebody said the secret word. And if you say the secret word tonight, the 6 Greens will mail you $20. Okay, so if you call in, and I actually have 2 secret words tonight. And if you say one of these secret words, I'll tell you what the words are after the program. But if you say one of those words, the duck will come down and give you $20. Well, anyways, I went to the protest. Let me just tie the duck up here so he doesn't come down on us. But I went to the protest, and I have to tell you, down in Washington, D.C., and it was wonderful. It was really wonderful. There was a lot of people there, 200. But it got me thinking. It got me thinking about having a convention. And that's what I think would be a good thing, is to have a convention of ex-witnesses coming in from all over the world. And I brought that up a couple of weeks ago on one of our programs. And boy, we got a lot of people emailing me and saying, Rick, I'm going to come in. I'd love to come in and go to that convention. So anyways, we're looking forward to that. So it looks like it may be in the Chicago area. It'll be in 2025. And then the theme, you have to have a theme for the convention, right? The theme for the ex-witness convention will be Still Alive in 25. So if you're interested in it, you don't have to make any firm commitments, but let me know so that I can start looking at making arrangements, getting a convention center, and see if we can't do it somewhere in the middle of the country. So let me know, and that way there I can say, well, there's enough interest to make this thing happen. So give us an email. You can email me at jwworldnews@gmail.com. That's what you can do, and let me know if that interests you. See if we get enough interest. If we get enough interest, then I'm going to go forward and see if we can't make that happen. So anyways, I got just mentioned a week ago, and boy, already I got about 10 emails from people that said, Rick, count me in, I'm coming. So wouldn't that be great to meet all of the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses in person? I think that would be a wonderful thing. So let me know if you're interested. Boy, I'll tell you what, I'm a happy man. I tell you that every week, but I'm very happy today, especially. And you know what makes me happy? When I see governments coming down on the Watchtower. And that's what they're doing today. That's what they're doing today. Yes, in fact, I see in Norway, and also we're going to be talking about Japan tonight, but these are governments that are coming down on the Watchtower. And Norway had a big article. It was in the news in Norway, and I got some information I want to share with you why Watchtower is in big time trouble in Norway. Now, we talked about Norway the last couple of years here, how the witnesses would not get their charity money. The witnesses were going to lose close to $2 million a year. And the reason was because the witnesses shun people. They shun family members. They shun young people even. And Norway got ticked off over that. So they said no charity money. But what it did, whenever there's a little something to look into, sometimes it exacerbates or makes more of a look into by the government, right? So if you cheated on your taxes and then you did it again, and well, they're looking at you now, they're going to be watching you. So in Norway, the government is eyeing Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses are becoming Norway's enemy. I love that. Doesn't that have a good ring to it? Doesn't that have a good ring to it? Yes, it does. So anyways, let me tell you a little bit about Norway. Well, there's a spokesman for the Jehovah's Witness Information Department in Scandinavia. His name is Jorgen Peterson. And he writes about what's going on with the witnesses in Norway, because there's one man who's an ex-Jehovah's Witness, and he brought up the fact that Jehovah's Witnesses in Norway are losing people left and right. People are leaving. People aren't getting baptized. The numbers in Norway are way down. So Peterson comes back in the newspaper because he was interviewed and kind of a rebuttal to what this other man was saying about the witnesses. So Peterson, who was, a highfalutin Watchtower official in Scandinavia, he says that, first of all, he mentions a little bit about Jehovah's Witnesses, but I'm sure you guys will agree with me that Peterson is not giving us the whole skinny. Now, listen to what he said. He said, "We believe those who worship God must do so on their own free will." Do you believe that statement? He's the country of Norway is coming down on the Watchtower saying that they're very controlling. They're like a high control group. They don't call them a cult, but we will. But the country of Norway is saying that, you're more or less forcing people to stay in your religion. So this spokesman for the Watchtower says, "We believe that those who worship God must do so on their own free will." Friends, we didn't have free will in the Jehovah's Witness organization. And then he even goes on to say, becoming a Jehovah's Witness is therefore a voluntary and an informed decision, and we do not practice infant baptism. Oh, hold on one second. Hold on. Let's just dissect this for a second or two. So this guy, Peterson, he's saying that Jehovah's Witnesses is voluntary, and people become Jehovah's Witnesses by an informed decision. Now, then he adds to the end of that sentence, "We do not practice infant baptism." So what he's saying is that a person would have to be totally informed. A third person would have to really know the inside out about the Watchtower, and then they would make an informed decision to join it. And we do not practice infant baptism. So he makes that statement, and he makes it somewhat emphatically. He more or less says, no, we don't do that, because he's more or less saying the Catholic Church does it. And because they do it, the infant doesn't have a right to really make an informed decision. But hold on, we're going to discuss it more in a little second and a minute here or so. So let's just go with this. He says that the only natural, he says the number of people in Jehovah's organization, the witness world, as we would say, he says the number is going to vary every year. It's what happens, he says, in this organization. Jehovah's Witnesses, he goes on to say, before they can even be baptized, he's trying to convince the country of Norway that Jehovah's Witnesses aren't this, the Watchtower is not this controlling, entity that Norway accuses them of being. He says Jehovah's Witnesses, before they become baptized, they must have a conversation with the congregation's judicial committee, which consists of at least 3 so-called elders. So he's trying to make his case here that, look if you're a Jehovah's Witness, you're one because you want to be one. You weren't coerced into being one. You became one because you're an informed person. You had all the information. So he's also saying here that in the period from 2010 to 2020, there's this period of 10 years, they had the highest number of worldwide witnesses. As a matter of fact, that was in 2019, baptisms. Let's go with that. They had the highest number of baptisms in 2019. They had 303,866. So he's kind of bloviating there. And then he goes on to say, then the lowest baptisms, this is an official from the Watchtower in the newspaper in Norway. He says, then the lowest number of baptisms was 241,994, and that was in 2020. Well, that was when COVID started making the scene, right? So then he goes on to say in the next 2 years, he says there's a gradual drastic decrease with 171,393 baptized in 2021, and then only 145,552 in 2022. So that's half the amount in 2022 that was baptized in 2019. That's about half. That's about 50% less. But Peterson, that's the official for the Watchtower, they always have to give an excuse, right? They've got to give an excuse. Why? What's the excuse here? Well, Peterson believed that the corona pandemic has taken a toll kind of on the organization, and that is part of the blame. Well, I would at least say it could be part of the blame because a lot of religions did lose a lot of their adherents because of the pandemic. But the Jehovah's Witnesses, I mean, they're really going to take this one to the bank and cash it. Peterson goes on to say that they had to suspend their conventions and meeting in Kingdom Halls and had all be done on Zoom meeting. And we know all that. We know all that. So according to Peterson, our numbers kind of tanked because that's what the newspaper in Norway was talking about. It said that baptisms dropped in half from 2019 to 2022. The baptism dropped in half. Now, there's a man over there in Norway. His name is Rolf Feruli. Rolf Feruli, and he's an ex-Jehovah's Witness. He's an apostate. But the Norwegian paper doesn't call him an apostate. It just calls him a Jehovah's Witness that left. So Rolf Feruli, well, he wrote a book. I never really heard the book. Maybe we can get Rolf Feruli on a program. But he wrote a book called My Beloved Religion. And in that book, he criticizes the governing body. He criticizes the religious community's top management in New York. So he has a lot to say. So in this article, it's quite an article, friends, because it deals with two sides of the story. We get the Watchtower's position on why the numbers were going down, and then we get this ex-witness position on what really took place. But Rolf Feruli, he makes several statements concerning why there's not as many people being baptized, at least in Norway, than in earlier years. And Rolf seems to indicate that it's because there's a translation problem. It was written in Norwegian, so I had to translate it in Google. But Rolf Feruli, according to Google Translate, says sermon has been lost. Well, what I translate that to be is that the Jehovah's Witnesses no longer have a sermon. They no longer have a pitch at the door. Remember all of us when we went to the door preaching, we all had a little set sermon. We would practice it in the Thursday night meeting, and we'd all go to the door. We knew exactly what we're going to say. Hi, my name is Rick Farron. Boy, you have a beautiful lawn, sir. Boy, did you hear about that murder down the street the other day? But that's all going to end soon. Did you know that Jehovah's Kingdom was established in 1914? I mean, the sermon we had. So this Feruli, the apostate in Norway, he's saying that they no longer have the sermon. And he believes that this is one of the reasons that he's pointing to why baptisms, at least in Norway, have really decreased. Feruli says that the quality of preaching has been lost among the witnesses. Now, I'm sure there's people listening into this program tonight. They will agree with Mr. Feruli. Yes, the quality of preaching in the Jehovah's Witness religion has been lost among the witnesses. I mean, stop and think about it. I did a little research, and I come to find out that it was after the Second World War, back in the mid-40s, that the witnesses really put a real emphasis on really trying to study the Bible to the best ability so they could answer any questions about their faith. Yeah, that was that in the mid-40s. And the knowledge back then of the Bible was unique because the witnesses really claimed that they had it and nobody else had it. In fact, they would condemn other religions for not teaching the truth. But the witnesses, they had this intense campaign or a concerned effort, if you would, to make the witnesses strong, to give them a strong knowledge of the Bible. But in the 21st century, let's say when we just turned into the 21st century back around 2000, well, things changed. Yeah, it no longer the witness had to really be astute. They didn't have to have the interlinear. They didn't have to have all of the publications. In fact, if anything, the publications were simplified. They became very elementary. As a result, Bible knowledge among Jehovah's Witness preachers today is very, very low. Very low. We all know that. I don't have to tell you that. Even if you're Jehovah's Witness listening in, you know darn well that some of the people who have come out of the Watchtower, 30, 40 years ago, have been in it that long, they have a real well working knowledge of what to say and how to say it. But the new recruits don't. So anyways, I'm going to get back to this Peterson fella. He's the official at Watchtower. I really was fascinated with this article, the way it was written, because it was like two sides of the story. You have this apostate that's challenging the Watchtower. Then you have the Watchtower coming out and kind of making excuses, could you say? Making reasons why things aren't like it used to be. So Peterson says, we believe that those who worship God must do so of their own free will. Now, I wanted to bring this back. We read it earlier, but he says becoming a Jehovah's Witness is therefore a voluntary and informed decision. Well, I have to tell you, it's not an informed decision. Everybody listening to this program tonight will tell me, yeah, okay, you might have studied, someone studied with you, and at the time you figured, well, this was the truth, but was it really an informed decision? Did they really tell you when you were studying and getting ready to be baptized that you couldn't celebrate all the holidays, basically? Did they tell you that you'd be shunned to the point of becoming mentally disturbed and perhaps even committing suicide because it would be that bad? Is that an informed decision? Absolutely not. But also, he's talking about the fact I mentioned earlier that we don't do infant baptizing. Now, someone called into our program I believe it was Randy M. Abused, and they said last Saturday night on our call that in one congregation, someone got a hold of Randy. There was a 5-year-old youngster. I don't know if it was a girl or a boy, but a 5-year-old child getting baptized. I'm not, well, it's not a baby, it's not an infant, but 5 years old. I mean, is that an informed decision? Can a child make an informed decision? Now, I know in Catholicism, someone could come in right now, and even Peterson kind of alludes to that, because in Catholicism, they take infants, very young little baby infants, and they baptize them. But it's not the same, folks. It's not the same being baptized of an infant into the Catholicism as it is being baptized as a child into the Jehovah's Witnesses. I used to equate child baptism to infant baptism, and I used to think that way, but I'm even thinking now that in the Jehovah's Witnesses, it's even worse. It's worse if a child is baptized. In fact, it's much worse. Infants who aren't baptized or have a Jehovah's Witness parent, as the organization will say, will die at Armageddon. So we know that, there's a lot to be said about children being baptized. We know that a child has to be baptized, not at infancy. The Watchtower doesn't do that, but I say it's worse. In Catholicism, when a baby or an infant gets baptized, it's not held against, it's kind of a ceremonial thing. It's no real commitment. I mean, how can an infant or even a child make a consent when they don't even know the whole story? But when you stop and think about it, the Watchtower, that's the little Freudian slip there, right? So, you can't drink at 18. In some states, you can't get married at 18 because you cannot make an informed adult decision. But yet in the Jehovah's Witness religion, they will let a 5-year-old person that can make an informed decision that will affect that person for the rest of their life. Now, if a child is baptized, an infant is baptized in Catholicism, and something happens, they go astray. I mean, the priests don't come to the person's house and tell the mother and father not to talk to their child, to be very careful around him because he's becoming an apostate, and tell other people to shun him. The Catholics don't do that. But I got news for you. In the Jehovah's Witness religion, they do that. A child makes a decision to be baptized, that's it. Come heaven or high water, that's a commitment. And if they don't follow the dictates of the Watchtower, see you later, pal. I mean, it is so difficult. It's so stupid. Do you think it's stupid? It's very stupid. They indoctrinate and they brainwash their kids. Oh, that's what parents do. Maybe you did it to your kids, but you didn't know at the time it was a cult. But yeah, the Watchtower indoctrinates and they brainwash their kids. And then they are just so delighted when little Susie, the little 11-year-old child, oh, she wants to dedicate her life to Jehovah. Oh my goodness, the parents are so ecstatic. They're so happy. So what's the kid? I mean, the little Susie, she wants to please her parents, right? By getting baptized and pleasing Jehovah. That's what they know. They know their parents want them to, so that's what a little child would do. Friends, that is coercion. In my book, that is coercion. It's shameless. It's shameless to expose a child or engage in baptism on a child and expect that child who made a commitment at 5, 10, 11, 12, even up to 14, 15 years old, who made a commitment to be a slave to the Watchtower and follow their dictates. That's a shameless act on the Watchtower. Well, you know, we're seeing the collapse of the Watchtower organization. In doing the news here for 18 years, I've seen this thing go right down the tubes. And you know, one of my favorite sayings, the monkey died. The circus is over. Yes, the circus is over. And I'll tell you when the circus started to get over. I'll tell you when the curtain started to come down on them. It was during the pandemic. Yes, it was during the pandemic. You see, during the pandemic, what did it do? It gave the Jehovah's Witnesses time to think. They didn't have to go to the meeting. They weren't running around in service. They could now get onto the internet, which is the great equalizer. And also, what did the Watchtower do at this time? They started doing some pretty unordinary ways of preaching. And they came on with their live streaming out of their studios in New York, and they started to expose the governing body. People could now see the governing body up close for the first time. I mean, how many, when you were a witness, how did you even know what the governing body looked like? Did you even know who they were? But they tried to make rock stars out of the governing body. So that was one thing that I really feel started tanking the Watchtower. When you started seeing Stephen Lett, Jeffrey Jackson, Tony Morris, when you started seeing people like that, I mean, you can't resonate to them. You can't connect with them. These guys were over the top. And then they gave the witnesses a chance to really look into child abuse during COVID-19. Child abuse, man, the witnesses were checking that out because that's all they heard every time they saw the news, on TV even. So they started looking into all the lies and all of the contradictions in the Watchtower organization. So COVID, it gave people the time to do research and to wake up. Now, you know, we know, and I'm going to read you the report. We got the current report that just came out this week. You'll hear from me on that in just a little bit. But, you know, they're going to report to us, you know, how many people are baptized, how many Bible studies there are, all of that, how many people went to the memorial. But I'd be really interested to know the amount of people that have been disfellowshipped or disassociated themselves. I would like to see that number. course, we're not going to see that number in the report, but I'm wondering, that number would be interesting. I would be willing to believe right now that more people are being disfellowshipped, more people are being disassociated, they're disassociating themselves. I wonder if the amount of those disfellowshipped has perhaps even surpassed the number of people getting baptized. I'm just going to throw that on the table. I don't know. I don't know if it has or not, but I'd be willing to think, hey, it's got to be unreal. Can you imagine being an elder today? Could you imagine the people coming with their doubts? Oh, Elder John, I saw something on the Daystar Network the other day, or I saw something on the Leah Remini show, or I saw something on the Oxygen Network. Is this true? Boy, they have got to be inundated with people coming to them and asking them questions. Would you want to be an elder right now? Boy, oh boy. So we're seeing some things here, and I know you're going to agree with me that are really changing. The pandemic was one thing, and that I still say perhaps was the biggest event to hurt the witnesses ever in the history of Jehovah's Witnesses. But there's something else. You know, time is the worst enemy of a false prophet. I'll say it again. Time is the worst enemy of a false prophet. Now, time has passed since 1914. Well, it's pretty easy to find out how many years ago that was. Well, we're in 2023. Next year is 2024. That'll be 100 years. 100 years since 1914. And the central message, that is the central message of Jehovah's Witnesses, was focused around 1914. And of course, we know what the Watchtower said. They said that the generation that saw the outbreak of World War I would still have a remnant alive on earth when the end came. That's what they said. And they kept moving it up and moving it up. So they were wrong. I mean, there isn't any remnant. There might be a couple. I don't know. But I mean, they're not alive. And we know that for a fact. Now, it's obvious they had to modify this teaching. 1914, they're not even mentioning it anymore. You're not reading about 1914. You're not reading about 1914 at all in anything. You're not in their publications. It's like it's totally removed. So they had to modify this teaching with the absurd overlapping generation. The overlapping generation. You can tell the rank and file, they're not buying this. The rank and file Jehovah's Witness, that's it. And I have to tell you something. I got good news for you. I get very excited. I went down and visited my father. I went and visited my father a couple of weeks ago in Pennsylvania. He's 100 years old. And I'll tell you, while I was there, now I have 2 sisters that have not talked to me for over 20 years. On the telephone, they talked to me. I couldn't believe it. And also one of the husbands, my brother-in-law, talked. That was remarkable. The rank and file are getting it. The rank and file are beginning to see the baloney that's being thrown around by this wicked organization. The zeal has gone. The Jehovah's Witness zeal has gone. The desire to preach is evaporated. It's in thin air. And so the door-to-door work, well, let's call that virtually dead. Virtually dead. And the organization has no one to blame for the loss of numbers but themselves. Watchtower is twisting the story once again. They're always going to try to put the blame on something instead of putting the blame on their own horrible cult. And we know that, preaching has become very passive. The door-to-door work, defending yourself with a Bible. Remember, we used to take the reasoning book and we used to actually glue it. We would have it bound into our Bible so that we could answer questions. Oh, no, those days are gone. I call it now passive preaching. Passive preaching. Yeah. When they introduced the cart work some years ago, Jehovah's Witnesses now prefer this passive form of preaching because they can sit on their backsides in the park surrounded by the absence of passerbys. You've seen them. You've seen pictures of Jehovah's Witnesses with the cart at the beach, at campgrounds. You've seen them. I've seen them. That's passive preaching. Well, anyways, we'll talk a little bit more about this. Who'd like to speak up? Is there anything anyone wants to say? All you have to do is hit *6. You're on with us. We'd love to hear from you. What do you think, huh? Are you going? Yes.
Yeah, I didn't know if somebody was ahead of me. Yeah, I just remember, this thing about, baptizing young people. Those were bragging rights for us. Do you remember that? When we used to say, oh, we don't baptize babies.
Oh, absolutely.
We want them to be at the age where they can make a logical, serious decision. We used to tell people, we'd say, we're not like the Catholics. We want our people are informed, they know what they're doing, and they're dedicating their life to Jehovah. And the only thing that I can think, Rick, why they're baptizing children is the same reason as the Muslim extremists. They said if you could capture a kid while he was young, and I mean 5 is young, 8's young, but they said if you could capture a kid's mind before 8, get him programmed, he would strap a bomb onto him and go in, because they were thinking, why are these kids doing this? Why are these kids able to do this? They were brainwashed. So that's the only reason I'm thinking the Watchtower psychopaths are saying, if we can get these kids while they're young, we can own them. And I think that's what's going on. I hate to say that, but Rick, logically, theocratically, from a logical point of view, you can't, like you said, make a decision to Jehovah or make a decision to God when you're a youth. And if you do make a decision to give your life over to Jehovah, then you better tell these youngsters at 5, you better give them a list of the consequences. Because when they're, like you said, Rick, when they're 15, 16, they might date somebody outside. They might start to do something else. I think it should be mandatory and law that they tell a boy at that age, now here's what's going to happen if you get this fellowship. We're going to put you out of the house. You're going to be basically abandoned. Your mother, we're not going to be able to talk to you. You're not going to, all your friends. And this might be a process that takes, 2 to 10 years, Rick, and I heard something the other day. I just want to bring it out real quick. It was JW Escape, and she wrote me, and she said that her fiance decided that he was going to go over and talk to her witness father, and she said he went over there unannounced, and he says, hey, I'm with I forget what I just said, but anyway, he went over there to meet her parents, and when she did, they invited him in. He said they talked for less than 5 minutes, and they said that her dad started hammering him about the witnesses, and this is the truth. And he said if she wants to come back, he's 91 years old, Rick, and he says if she wants to come back, she knows what to do and what papers to sign. And her mother looked over and goes, she knows exactly what to do. And Rick, think about this. 35 years, 15 minutes from her home. This is what Watchtower's doing. This is so destructive, Rick, to people's character. You need your family to create wholeness, to love when you fall down. And I just was like so crushed. She said, Dan, 15 minutes away, and I haven't talked to him for 35 years, and they're just as hardened as the day they went in. And I said, man, I am so sorry. It just blew me away. What do you think, Rick?
Well, that it would blow you away, and I like the way how you express yourself, Dan, and the people on YouTube like it too. You're very passionate and you're very committed to exposing this cult. No, well, what they do,
Rick.
let me just finish that, Jeffrey, with Dan here for a second. But what they do, Dan, is what you just said. It is really terrible how they would take and break a person like that from their family. You need your family. and the Watchtower knows it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you. Is that you, Jeffrey?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, those kids are totally brainwashed. I've seen it firsthand myself when I went to Kingdom Hall, and also scientific evidence will tell you that people that are not in their 20s, it takes them to their 20s to get their mind fully developed of what they need to do, what they want to do, and what they want to commit to. And I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Always good to hear from you. Thank you very much.
Hey, Rick.
Yes.
Hey, Rick. Hey, Rick. This is Stephen. Good evening. I just wanted to say very quickly on the topic of coercion. Right here in the Midwest, in Chicago area, in the 80s, there was a circuit overseer. Last name was McGee. Can't figure out. I can't remember his first name. He went by the moniker Pioneer McGee. And that's what he always encouraged everybody to do was pioneer. But he started telling from the platform, hey, you got children growing up in your house, they don't want to serve Jehovah, kick them out. Kick them out. And you get these circuit overseers sometimes twice in their rotation, sometimes 4 times. I believe we had him 4 times. But as a result of him telling parents, kick your kids out if they don't want to quote unquote serve Jehovah, I personally knew kids who got kicked out of their house. Some, because they hadn't turned 18 yet, hadn't even graduated high school. Now, can you imagine the impact of being raised in this organization, which is so insular? You really learn nothing that you can use in the real world, and you're just kicked out on the street with no support because everybody you know, including your family, are Jehovah's Witnesses. Those kids suffered.
Well, Steph.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's right. No, Stephen, I have to tell you, we hear it now. I never was faced with that type of punishment. And maybe a lot of people have not been faced with that type of punishment listening to the show. But you have to have some empathy, some feeling for a young person that's thrown out of their house as a teenager, nowhere to go, and shunned by all of their friends and relatives. My goodness. Daniel, what you want to say, Daniel?
No, I was just like what everybody else is saying. I agree. It's kids getting baptized. I remember when I lived in Watsonville, California. This was right. I think it was right during near the San Francisco quake. So it was in the 91, 90, something like that, and during October 17th. Anyway, there was this boy. He was bright as could be. He had a photograph. I wish he would have went back and read the old literature because he probably would never got baptized. But he was either 7 or 9, I can't remember, and he got baptized. And I mean, that boy could get up there and give some talks. You think you're watching like a little elder up there already, but he was programmed, and you could tell. But he also believed he was doing the right thing, and everybody was so proud of him. And I was thinking to myself, sitting there, he hasn't even gone through the hormonal changes yet and going through teenage years. What if you screw up? Because I had already, at that age, had messed up and gotten in trouble, with just liking girls and stuff. And so, I was thinking, would I got baptized? I mean, I was 12, but that's been too young. And think about it. Show, but how old was Jesus when he got baptized? Man, why didn't he go baptized as a boy? And where is there all the scriptures showing little boys, little girls going up and get baptized? And where is the scripture showing you had to sit down with 3 men and be asked 120 questions or whatever it is now? Before they just ran up and got baptized, but they were adults, to my knowledge. I could be wrong, but that's just my thought.
Well, Daniel, we're looking forward to you coming on tonight, you and Eric, with your program, Awakening After the Watchtower. Now, I wanted to ask you, did you want to come on tonight on video, or do you just want to call in?
I'll just call in. I've been sick. I just got over being sick, so
Okay.
I'll be like the fellow writer or
All
something.
right, just call in then. That's good. I just wanted to see what that's going. We're looking forward to your program. So Daniel will be on later. He has a program. Him and Eric, former Jehovah's Witness. Eric is out of Tennessee. Daniel out of Michigan, and they got a program tonight at 9:30 when the news is over. It's called Awakening After the Watchtower. So we're looking forward to the program. Thank you, Daniel. All right. So
Hey,
what?
Rick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Rick, thank you. Speaking about coercion, I know when I was getting the JW message from my sister in 1971, I was informed that if I was still in a Marine Corps uniform, that I would definitely die at Armageddon, which was absolutely guaranteed to happen in 1975. If you get a hold of the Truth book, which is really the book of lies, but if you were to get a hold of that little blue book, it would tell you there is a definite time, and it started in 1914 and would end in 1975 with the Battle of Armageddon. That was guaranteed to happen because Jehovah God told the governing body or the anointed that that's the date he's going to bring the end of the system, which kind of makes you scratch your head a bit, because the scripture will tell you that Jesus doesn't know when Armageddon's going to come, but the governing body members do. It doesn't make any sense, but that is coercion. When you tell someone that if you're not a baptized, dedicated Jehovah's Witness, you're going to die in 75. Another thing that Truth Book does not tell you, they don't tell you about disfellowshipping. They tell you if you're having any kind of problems, that it was your option. You could talk to the elders about it. Well, I talked to the elders about a problem. I got disfellowshipped, and I haven't talked to my sons in 20 years, 30 years now, 30 years. So the Watchtower definitely is a cult. And I'm glad we had Linda James on in her program, because the Watchtower is going the same way as Jim Jones, and it's going to hurt a lot of people very, very shortly. Thank you, Rick.
Well, thank you very much, Dick. I really appreciate you always calling into the program. We always love to hear from you and your wife, Connie. Thank you. Well, anyways, you're on JW World News. Yes, go ahead.
Hey, Rick, this is Jay from St. Augustine. How are you?
Well, Jay, I'm cranking away at it. Thank you, Jay, for calling in. That's good to hear from you. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment about the overlapping generation that you were speaking about.
Yes.
Yeah, so when I was doing my research and waking up, I sent a picture to my family. This picture was sent only to my family members. And this was a picture of Queen Elizabeth and Prince Charles, Prince George, and Prince Williams, right? And then underneath the photograph, I said, governing body wants you to believe that this is one generation. And I did not get one person to respond to that message at all.
Well, what do you think?
I wanted to send them
Well, what do you think the reason is, Jason, why they didn't respond?
I think that I think when it's time for people to actually think about these things and reason about these things that they're being taught, I think there's a mental block.
Well, no, that's good you're thinking that, but I'm thinking there isn't one Jehovah's Witness that you could run into today and you say, explain to me the overlapping generation. They can't, they can't do it. It doesn't make any sense. How do you make sense out of nonsense? They don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know, Jason. Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
Jesus, good to hear from you.
that.
It's good to hear from you. It really, really is. Thank you, Jason, for wanting to come on and speak up tonight. Boy, it's so good to you. Won last night and last week on Joe and Fran show, and I think that was wonderful.
Yeah, it was really nice to come on and hear everyone and listen to their comments and everything. It's very encouraging.
Excellent. Well, keep up the good work. Keep cranking away at it, Jason. You're a good man. Don't you ever change.
Yeah.
All right. Good.
You too, okay?
Yeah, thank you,
Talk to
Jason.
you later. Okay, bye-bye.
All right. Looks like we got the King of Dots. King of Dots, you're on with us. Go ahead, buddy.
Well, I want to do an official shout out to Brandon Walker and Robbie Robbins, two 18-year-olds who were completely abandoned by their witness parents. The one brother was an elder. He moved away. His son was listening to Metallica, which was started by a teenage witness, in case you didn't know. And he told him, I'm moving away. I don't want to ever see you again. And the other one, Brandon Walker, his father, Peter SOB, told him also, I don't want to ever hear or see from you again. He got disfellowship for whatever reason. I don't know. I did talk to him on the phone after he DF'd, but I don't, and they moved away, moved to Iowa, 500, 600 miles away. But in both cases, these individuals were not wicked individuals. I actually tried to do shepherding calls on the one, but it's just horrifying to think that someone would say that to their kid. I don't want to ever see or hear from you again. And then really move hundreds of miles away. So there's my shout out in case someone knows these two individuals. I'm thinking of them. No, their parents may not be thinking of them, but I am.
Well, you have a right
That's all I
to.
gotta
Well,
say.
we all thinking of them. That's nuts. How can, like you just said, King and Dots, how can a parent do that? That is demonic. That is unbelievable punishment. That's terrible. Terrible. Thank you. Always good to hear from the King of Dots. All right. Did you have a thought, Jeff?
Yeah, I was going to say about this baptism, underage and stuff like that. It's just, it's just not right. And it's, there ought to be government regulations on all religions to not do that. I mean, you need to be 25 years old before you commit to an organization. And that's my feeling.
Well, I think you should run for a government position because I agree with you. I think you get a lot of people to agree with you. You get a lot of votes for that. And that's why, Jeff,
Thank you.
well, that's why, Jeff, right now, we're going to focus our attention on Japan because Japan is having a big time problem with Jehovah's Witnesses. I love it. We talked about Norway earlier, and now we have another major country that having a big time problem with Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, Yahoo Japan is basically the most prominent news page in Japan. A lot of people read Yahoo News for some reason. Now, one of the top articles in Japan on Yahoo News this week has to do with the rampant sexual abuse that exists in Jehovah's Witness religion, and it goes unreported and unnoticed. So what Jeff just said, government should step in here. And I am starting to see government stepping in. We see Norway a little earlier stepping in. They're ticked off with the witnesses. We've talked on our program in the past about Belgium. We talked about Denmark. We talked about Sweden. We talked about the United Kingdom. We talked about Canada. We talked about all of these countries that are starting to come down on the witnesses. Now we got Japan. And Japan is concerned for the children of Jehovah's Witnesses. The word is getting out. The word is getting out how bad, how evil the Jehovah's Witness organization is. Now, in this article, I was reading on Yahoo News out of Japan, 159 cases of minors being sexually assaulted in that religion by believers. In other words, by their own people. And they couldn't really Japan knows they really couldn't speak up and talk because something would happen to them. So these are damaging reports that are coming out in Japan, and it's really great social significance to see these countries stepping forward and they're understanding the actual events, the situations that are taking place in this terrible organization known as Watchtower. Now, this survey, there was a survey conducted in Japan, and it was conducted with a number of Jehovah's Witnesses that have left. They became ex-witnesses like us, apostates, so to speak, and they wanted to speak up and let the country of Japan know how evil the Watchtower organization is. So these are former Jehovah's Witnesses that basically got the country to look at the problems that's going on in that religion. Now, first of all, there was like questions asked. There was 3 categories. Japan, the government wanted to ask questions. They wanted to talk to some of the ex-believers in the Jehovah's Witness religion. So they wanted to talk, first of all, about sexual violence by believers. That was one of the thoughts they wanted to talk about. Now, countries are now understanding it. We've been talking about it for years. But sexual violence by believers, that's the first thing they wanted to talk about. And then damage related to expressions in meetings and publications. Now, think about this. I think this is pretty astute for the country of Japan to even take notice of. The country of Japan is realizing that some of these Watchtower publications and some of the things that people are hearing at meetings can be very damaging to children. Now, remember, this whole article or this whole idea of coming down on the witnesses predicated on the fact of Japan realizes that young children are being hurt in the organization. So they're saying that some of these magazines and publications that the Watchtower prints and some of the expressions that these children are hearing at meetings can cause all kinds of damage. It can create some emotional damage to the young children. And even with elders, that's another discussion of the elders that are in charge of the congregations don't seem to really be helpful to the children. So, these are things Japan's concerned with. We've been concerned for years, but now countries are catching up. So there's something here of interest that caught my way of thinking, and it has to do with children being beaten. That's another thing that the paper in Japan was speaking about. Many Jehovah's Witness children have been beaten. Now, there was 162 people. That was about 70% of the 217 respondents who were answering questions concerning how hard and how evil the Watchtower is. Now, out of the 162 people, 70% of the total amount of people that were in question. Hold on one second here. Just something I want to make clear. Okay, there's 217 people that were questioned. These are former Jehovah's Witnesses, like in Australia. So 70% of the 217 that were questioned, or about, it's 70%. They said that they were beaten. They were beaten, and 64 of those people were under 3 years old when they were beaten. So Japan is looking into this idea. They call it flogging. In Japan, they call it flogging, where the children would actually be flogged or beaten with leather belts, with hoses, with rulers, with anything that would cause, in some cases, permanent damage to these young children. So Japan is very concerned about children being beaten in the Watchtower. Now, we know that happens. There's nobody listening to this program tonight that can say, oh, no, Jehovah's Witnesses, they would never beat their children. Oh, no, they're kind and loving. Friends, you went to the Kingdom Hall. You heard the beatings. I heard them. Geez, you'd hear little kids being dragged out of the main room, brought into the back room. Oh, Mommy, don't hit me. Don't hit me. Please don't hit me. I remember that a lot. Do you remember that? Maybe you were also abused physically. Maybe your mother and father beat the living daylights out of you because you didn't, act in a way they thought Jehovah was approving. And really, that they used to beat it into kids. In the Watchtower.
Hey, Rick.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, I heard it myself and I saw it, but down in Louisiana, there was a Kingdom Hall that was in a neighborhood that the neighbors, you know, because they were taking the kids outside, you know, using corporal punishment on them. The neighbors complained to the police about this. Believe it or not, they actually complained to the police, the local police, about all the corporal punishment was going on. So in front of the Kingdom Hall, they were taking them out front, out of the doors, doing that. So.
Well, Jeff, in fact, that's a fascinating story. Now, let me ask you a question. If you were an elder, so the police showed up and said, we have reports that, you know, some children are being beaten in here. If you were an elder, what would you say to the police, Jeff?
That's a hard question. I'm brainwashed.
I'm not trying to.
I would be brainwashed at that point, Rick.
Well, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'll answer the question.
No, sir.
Well, would someone like to come on? What?
Well, yeah. Okay, I'll say an elder that is an elder, he denied. We'll say that. I was appalled by it. We'll say that. What I heard in that back room, I was appalled by it. And I saw children that didn't do anything, that really didn't deserve that. And they were taken in that back room, and I could hear it. So,
well,
there you go.
Well, what we're going to do is I'm going to throw this out to the audience. Hold on, Daniel. So I'm going to throw this out to the audience. So now we have a report. The neighbors or whatever heard that there were children being beaten and yelling and screaming.
They saw it.
Huh? All right.
They saw it, Rick.
All right.
That's why they reported it to the police.
All right. So, okay, we have a story here where they reported to the police that kids were being beaten in the Kingdom Hall. So when the police showed up, I want you all to put your elder suit on. What would you, come on and tell us, what would you tell the police when they showed up and accused you guys of beating up children? What would you say? Who wants to answer that? I might even have a prize for you. Go ahead. Who'd like to speak up first? What would you say to the police? I'm just put the elder suit on now. What would you tell the police? The neighbors are complaining of you guys beating kids.
One thing, Rick, they were taking them outside. That Kingdom Hall, that particular Kingdom Hall, they were taking them outside the front doors and doing this. So they must not have had a back room or.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe
the police showed up. So we got some people going to put the elder suit on. Well, what are you going to tell the police when they show up? Okay, we'll go with Dan. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I think I would just say we're disciplining them, and the Bible says that we can use the rod. You know, if you're going to spoil the children, if you don't use the rod, so that this is a practice. I don't know. Maybe that's not enough, Rick, because they're beating them, but. I was just thinking in the sense of beating them, period. My dad used to say, the rod removes the thought far from you. So I don't know. That's just one idea.
Well, it's a good idea, but it's a darn good idea because the elders certainly aren't going to admit to it. They're going to have to come up with some type of an excuse. Go ahead. You're on with us. Who's next? Go ahead.
Yeah. I'll throw on my elder suit. I'd walk out there with a straight face, look at the cop right in the eye and say, that was evil, apostate lies. We never chastise our children. We love them to death. Evil prostate.
Well, no, that's a possibility. I mean, I'm glad you put your elder suit on, Dick. You might get some crazy elder to say that. Let's hear what 203 has to say. Put your elder suit on, Carol.
Hi, Rick.
Hi.
I wanted to say exactly what Dan said. Spare the rod, spoil the child. And that they were scripturally correct in what they were doing.
Yeah, they would kind of make it like, well, I think you're making more of a big deal out of this than it is. There's children here that are unruly. And of course, even giving them a little slap on the behind is going to cause them to, be a little noisy. They come up with some type of an excuse, And then, of course, they could even, yeah, go ahead. Who wants to put the elders?
I had one more to add on to what she was just saying.
Yeah.
Jehovah loves those he disciplines.
Yeah. Well, Dan, I'll tell you what. I'm sure you'd have to really. I would love to have been there when the police came. Oh, I'd love to be the fly on the wall. I would love to have heard that conversation.
Oh,
Really.
or you could turn it around and say Jehovah, but you should discipline those who love those who. Never mind.
Well, tough love, maybe, Debbie. Tough love, yeah. Get it.
Something like that.
Yeah, all right.
I'm tongue-tied.
All right, well, that's all right, Deb. Good to hear from you, though. Always good to hear from Debbie. Dan, what do you have to say, Dan, up there in Michigan? Well, put your elder suit on. Well, what are you going to say when the police show up and accuse you of beating children?
I think I would go with what Dan already said, because I was thinking the same thing. They would use, it's in the Bible, of disciplining your children, and you want them to be respectful and grow up to be respectful. So they would light over it and probably make excuses like some children just scream with the thought of being whipped or whatever, and cry, exaggeration, whatever. It would be better. I wanted to share something really quick.
Sure.
When I was a kid, we had to go pick our own switch off a tree to get whipped. And one night, I guess my dad was inactive at the time. My mom, I guess I was disobedient at the meeting. I don't remember what it was, but she said, as soon as we get home tonight, your dad is going to whoop you. And I thought, oh my God, I was scared the whole night. I was a little boy. So when I got home, I went and put the Revelation book inside my pants and shoved some Watchtower literature, not thinking it's going to give me a square butt, but it did. So when I leaned over to get my whipping by my dad, he thought, what the heck? And that was even worse, because now I had to pull my pants down, my underwear down, and he took his belt off. And got me. But I tried to use the literature to protect my butt. It didn't work.
Well, that's a good story. But I'll tell you, there's plenty of people listening on here tonight that had to pull their pants down and get hit with a little stick or a belt or a coat hanger or something. And the witnesses didn't think that was harmful. That's harmful. Look at I can understand a little tap on the butt, but not with a belt or some hairbrush or something like that.
Hey, Rick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Real fast. You take a young child and ask them to sit through a 2-hour meeting and not, just not say anything or not do anything. Sit there like a robot. That's a lot to ask. Or, you're not asking, but expect, so I'll leave it at that.
All right. Well, that's good. No doubt about it, Jeffrey. We have another caller. Did you want to say something? You're on with us. You're anonymous. We'll go with anonymous. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, this is Canadian protester.
Yes, Canadian protester.
Yeah. So I would say that the elder would come out and say, we are not in charge of how individual families discipline their own children. They wouldn't take any responsibility whatsoever.
Canadian protester.
And I have a story about. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that is a good answer. That's probably what they would say. That they wouldn't put them in the limelight of doing it. It's, our members do certain things and we can't constantly be watching what they do. Good comment. Very, very good comment. Go ahead. What's the rest of your thoughts? Go ahead.
I do have some, just about discipline. My little brother, my father always had a wooden spoon in his jacket pocket. So when my little tiny brother, and I'm talking like 2, would act out, my father would just open his jacket and look at him. And he would stop, because if he didn't, he got dragged to the back or to the basement, depending, because we moved a lot. So every Kingdom Hall was different. And you could hear him getting just wailed on with this wooden spoon. And wooden spoons are extremely painful. But as the other speaker said, a lot of times we were told, you guys are going to get in trouble when you get home. And my brother and I were in his room, and I'm 5 years older than him. And I was saying, maybe if you wear, 3 or 4 pairs of underwear, it won't hurt so much. And then I had to go to my room, and he got hit. And then when I was in my room waiting, my father came in, and I must have been in grade 4 or 5 at the time, and pulled down my underwear and used his belt on me. And he said, and if I moved, I would get it more. So, the corporal punishment was, and he would say, this hurts me more than it does you.
Boy, I'll tell you, that's sad to even hear that. Really, there's people listening into this program tonight. It's hard to even believe it, Canadian protester, but there's many listening in that happened to them as little kids. They were beaten, some beaten worse than others. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Today, it could never happen. Today, it would never, ever happen.
Well, you always knew the families that were very strict with their children, because the children would sit like little stick figure robots in the chairs for fear that they would get hit or flicked on the face or backhanded on the back of the head or pinched in the middle of the meeting to be quiet, and then humiliated and dragged to the back because they just couldn't sit still any longer, or they'd start to cry. And the parent would drag them in the back, and everybody would be looking and snickering like, oh, they're in trouble again. Boy, this is going to make this meeting exciting, because we'll have something to listen to, because this is the most boring meeting. And it was like the only entertainment that anybody could really have in the middle of a meeting was, oh, their children are very bad. They're going to need to be beat really good because Jehovah says so. It's just sick. I think there needs to be a huge inquiry about this, and I'm glad that Japan is on board with this. So that's all I have to say for tonight.
Well, that's good, Canadian protest. But what was going through our minds? Even I would sit in a meeting, I can remember, and there was one family there, it was a husband and wife, and they had the cutest little kids. They had 3 little kids. They had 2 boys and 1 girl, and they were the cutest little kids. And boy, they would act up, and boy, and then the father would take them in the back. Oh, Daddy, please don't hit me. Please don't hit me. Be yelling and screaming. I'm wondering now, even now, I'm kind of thinking I should have said something. Somebody should say something. We're all listening to it. There'd be like 100 people in the congregation, but we were all happy with that.
Yeah.
We were all able to deal with that. Now they look back, I'd speak up in a heartbeat. Don't hit the kid like that, okay? Just counsel them, take them out, but don't hit the little kid. Don't hit the little kid. Yeah.
Hey, Rick.
Yes, Dan.
I was just thinking, what this sister was just talking about, Canadian, was it
Canadian protester. Canadian protester.
Yeah. It's sad that became a norm. It was normal, and like people were snickering up in trouble again. Where was our senses? Where did we? It's just sad they even did it, because I remember that as a kid too. It was a norm. It wasn't something that was considered like, oh, that parent's going to abuse their child. You know what I mean? It was normal. I remember. Do you guys remember in the late 70s, early 80s, you had little Hot Wheel cars, and in that you could get tracks, and they were plastic, and they were probably about 2 foot long, and you could build a track. And then, you'd roll the car down the track yourself.
Yeah.
But they were plastic strips. My mom used to, if it wasn't a wooden spoon, she'd use my own toys. Now, stop and think about it. This is something you enjoy to play with. Now it becomes a weapon of mass destruction on my thighs, where I have track marks welts on the back of my thighs the next day. How is a parent not think? But I didn't want to play with my toys no more, because I was like, "Oh, I should use that against me." You know what I'm saying?
Well, you got me laughing there, but I'm not laughing at at what she was doing. But
No.
I mean, but that could be traumatizing. Geez, that down on a little kid, that's your toy. My mother's whacking me with this thing. I like what you said. It's a mass destructive weapon. I mean, it's unbelievable. That's what you would think.
But you know what? At least those track marks finally faded away. I know there were some kids in our hall. They all grew up with elephant ear. I mean, big floppy ears like Dumbo, the flying elephant, because their parents sit behind them, and every time they acted up, they jerk them clear up out of their chair, pulling them on their ears. And I'm not kidding you. Their ears got just as big as could be. They're still that way today.
Jeez. It's
Mr. Farron?
yes.
But not everybody. Not one parent. He says he'd line his 3 kids up and whip them before the meeting. He says this is just to show you if you act up what you're going to get when you get home.
Oh,
that's abuse. That's abuse.
That's terrible.
But not all. I mean, I've heard of other even worse than that, where they would tie them up in the barn and beat them and stuff. I never saw that myself, but I tell you, not all of us was that way. We had the first kid in our hall, and I took. When she started crying, that was Andrea. She started crying, and I didn't want the people to be disturbed. We didn't have a mother's room back then because it was small Kingdom Hall. So I stepped out on the porch and let her, so they wouldn't be disturbed. Guess what I heard across the street? And the neighbor says, "Yep, that's those Jehovah's Witnesses beating their kids again."
Oh my goodness!
And I went and told the elders. I said, "I'm not." They said, "Well, you don't have to go out. That don't bother us." So I stayed right in there. Next time she cried, I bet it wasn't 2 months they built a mother's room.
Oh, Randy,
Wow.
you know, we talk about this, and I'm laughing, but I'm certainly not laughing at what took place then. But I'm thinking how crazy people would just go along with it all, not even question it. And we look back now that we're out of it. It's crazy. Yes, go ahead, Stefan.
Yeah.
I just had a quick comment. When I was a kid, I don't know what the listening age of your audience is, but when I was a kid, that Thursday night meeting, there was an intermission. And a lot of people have, for whatever reason, never knew this, but there was an intermission, and it was about 15 or 20 minutes. And we had a diner across the street. So a lot of us witnesses, and I was a little kid, but we'd go to the diner and we'd get a hamburger, cheeseburger, malt, or fry, eat real quick, run back, and for the second half of the meeting. So when parents would take their kids in the back to spank them, they called that getting hamburger. And so you'd see a parent jump up. Most of the time it was the mom dragging the kid, and the kid would be screaming, "No, mommy, I don't want a hamburger." And everybody would be laughing. And it's just absurd to even think about now, but this really happened.
That is unbelievable. Well, it is. I mean, obviously it just wasn't an isolated event. This took place in so many, every congregation. You know, don't.
Hey, Rick?
Yes, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, my ears are hurting.
Yeah.
I got thumped in the damn ears so much. My dad was a Marine, and I had big ears. They used to call me Big Ears Bugle Band.
Yeah.
And my dad, I don't know if he just liked thumping me on the ear because they were so damn big, but we'd get fighting in the chair, you know, and we'd move a little bit and crack, and I'd be like, "God damn," and I was like, "What the hell was that?" And my dad would give me a look like, he'd have his arms, he'd have one boy on one side, one boy on the other. And we'd sit there and we'd try, Rick. We really did try. We'd try not to move for 2 hours, And sure as shit, I'd wiggle a little bit and whack. And Rick, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize how much trauma it would be, going to a Kingdom Hall and getting beat like that, because we got beat we got thumped on the ears at the hall, and then we got beat with the belt when we got home. We had switches, we had anything they could get their hands on to remove, this child nature we had to move and that sort of thing. But no, I agree, man. My ears, I'm surprised I still have ears. They have been thumped so many times. My dad had big, powerful hands. I mean, they were like, he was a powerful, strong man. And when he cracked you, I mean, the whole hall could hear it. I think like that one sister said, it was kind of fun to watch people go in the back and you say, whack the shit out of them, But then when my dad cracked, I'm wondering if they were saying the same thing. Stump that dumbass shit. Yeah.
I'll tell you. No, as you look back,
Sorry,
it's really amazing. I mean, some of us came through pretty unscathed, But there's some we have to really think about that have been really damaged by all of this. I mean, you know, we were whacked, but some really were whacked really bad. Yeah, go ahead. You're on with us. Go ahead.
Hey, it's Eric.
Yes, Eric.
I thought I'd add this. My parents were different. They are very much like afraid of their reputation, and so like if you acted up, you were getting it when you got home. And I think I was maybe like around 12 years old, maybe 13, somewhere around there. And my brother's always been a pain in my ass. And for whatever reason, at the Kingdom Hall, I stuck my foot out when he went to go to the bathroom and tripped him, and he fell, and like everybody laughed, and I was like a trap. And my dad, because his dad was abusive, and my grandfather was a Mormon converted to Jehovah Witness. And he was a fireman, and he used the fireman belt. My dad would always say, "At least you're not getting the fireman's belt." But he'd do the ritual, put me over his knees, and hit my butt. And I knew I was going to get it that day, so I took a literature book that was a soft cover, and I put it up my ass. And he hit me, and he hurt his hand so bad. He goes, "Fuck!" I'm sorry, I didn't mean to swear, but that's what he said. And he said, "What are you doing there?" And I took the book out, and then he really gave it to me after that.
Geez.
But that's the funny part. But the sad part is that I was born with a disability, both my brother and I, and we're hemophiliacs and we're bleeders. And my dad used to, especially around 16, he didn't like when I talked back, or I'm a why person. Well, why? Why is it like that? He hated that. He hates when you ask questions. Just do as you're told, you know. And he beat me really bad when I was like around 16, and he beat me so bad that my mother had to give me like intravenously my medicine, and I had internal bleeding. And then this is I'm not just bitching and using this as a psychiatry session. It's just more of like to show how like if your kid's got a bleeding disorder, you think you could spare the rod a little bit? I mean, he beat me bad, and I had to fight. At one point, I fought back, and I put my father in a submission, and he's like, "Let me go," and I'm like, "I know I have to eventually, but I'm just going to enjoy this." But he was very abusive, and it's sad that kids. I know there's a lot of people that have a lot of stories like this, and it's not normal, you know. I just thought I'd add that.
Well, Eric, I like what you said there. It is not normal. Underline the word normal. That is not normal behavior. But it seems like as I'm hearing all of this, and it's from, you know, a number of people calling in and saying it happened to them, as I'm hearing this, I'm also kind of blaming myself at this point. I'm saying, gee, why didn't I speak up? What was really holding us back? We should have said, stop this meeting right now. These children should not be beaten like this. But, you know, I didn't.
To go along. To go along with what you've been saying before, because it was a separate show. You talked about mothers believe me, my dad, he hit the hardest, but my mother was the most cruel when it came to punishment. Soap in the mouth, hitting you with spoons. My dad only used his hand. He never used a weapon, but my mother would use weapons.
No, I've got.
In fact, I thought I'd add that too.
Well,
it's a sick cult that.
I'm glad you added that, because it's really the women. The men too. In Daniel's case, his father was somewhat abusive, but the women seem to be the main culprits here. I mean, they would go ballistic on the kids.
My mom used my racetrack against me.
Yeah.
Okay, can I say something?
I had come to find out.
Can I say something in defense of the women here? We had at Kingdom Hall when I was a kid. There was one brother that would they had a baby boy, and he was maybe 8 or 9 months old, and if that child moved, even sitting in its mother's lap, that brother would jerk that baby up, and that baby, I mean, even if that young knew they were going to get hit, and you could hear that he would take the baby outside and beat the living daylights out of that baby, bring the baby back in, and his little leg would be blood red. And the baby would be going, he couldn't completely stop crying. And the dad would tell him, if you don't shut up, you're going to get it again. And if that baby didn't stop crying fast enough, he would take it right back outside and beat it again. Finally, though, sisters had enough of that. I mean, every time the father would get up, the women would start crying because they knew the man was going to beat their baby. And finally, a sister got up when he stood up one time, and she took the baby away from him and kept it the whole meeting. And after that, he didn't stop doing it, but he didn't do it quite as often. But as the baby grew up more and more, the friends would step in and take the baby to keep him from, beating it. Unfortunately, though, he had another baby, and the same thing started all over again.
Oh, that's terrible, Debbie.
And
That's terrible.
it was really bad.
Well, that's bad. Well, thank you for sharing that story. 630, you're on with us. Go ahead. Speak up. You're on with us. 630.
Hey, Rick.
Oh, yes, it's Mark.
Rick,
Yes, Mark. Good, good.
Mark.
Yes.
Mark, yeah. How you doing, Rick?
I'm good, good. I'm good, good. Thank you.
Good to hear, sir. Always good. Hope, I know you've been staying busy, but I hope you've been doing very well in every good and positive way. That's Rick. You've got a great show going tonight. Sorry I missed your show last week and all that, but I know all your shows are good, and I do always check up on them on either Facebook or YouTube and listen to them as much as possible. So you always got some really totally awesome shows. I didn't quite catch what was your specific topic for tonight, Rick?
Well, tonight we were talking about Japan, Mark, and the country of Japan is coming down on the witnesses for sexual abuse, but they're also concerned about young kids getting hit, getting flogged, beat by their parents.
Oh yeah.
Did you get beat, Mark?
Oh, yeah.
Did you get beat?
Yes, I did. I'm telling you, and if you remember my stories, Rick, yeah, I got beat by my mother. She beat me plenty, like this one gentleman was just talking about, the same way with wooden paddles and wooden spoons. Dude, oh, yeah, and belts and everything. Absolutely. My father did it, too, and my father sometimes used wooden boards. I got both my parents beat me. They did it in front of other people. They embarrassed me. They would hit me and kick me in front of other people, slap me in front of other people as a child. My mother, too, with her violent temper, used to grab me right by the hair and shake me around in a very violent way, right by the hair. I mean, I'm talking violent. I'm talking shake me right by that hair really good. Pull my hair good. And she sometimes would do it in front of other people, too. I remember doing at assembly convention when I was 10 years old to me. I mean, she was just brutal. And she told me, if I'm not listening at that assembly convention, I better give a full report and about what it was all about. And if I don't, I'm in big trouble. Most likely going to get spanked for it. And then like I told you, my stepfather Jerry, and my mother too. As a teen, as adult, they committed assault and battery. They hit me. I had to go to the police about it. Police couldn't do nothing, but I did it because I'd had enough of their abuse and assault and battery. You don't hit a person as an adult. You don't hit a person. You don't dare put your hands on a person as an adult. There are laws. And the truth of the matter is, Rick, when I had to have the police explain it to my mother that it's against the law. Domestic violence and domestic abuse is against the law, and you don't hit and put your hands on someone once they're an adult. She didn't accept it. She got all defensive, started defending Jerry. And at the same time, she told the police she didn't know that. She never knew that was a law. She didn't know that. Now, I don't buy that.
No, I don't buy it either, Mark. I mean, you were smart enough to see it and get yourself out of that silly organization, but they're violent. They're
very violent.
Yep. So, well, thank you, Mark.
Very violent. I'm talking too. It was rough. And with the alcohol abuse, my father was, as a Jehovah's Witness, still was a pretty hardcore alcoholic. Jehovah's Elders didn't care. Jehovah's Witnesses didn't care. They just let him be an alcoholic. What did they care? So, I'm just saying it's a very, very abusive organization. And I'll make it clear, Rick, and you don't have to agree with me, but they're extremists. They are Nazis. They are in the occult. They are satanic. No two ways about it. And they are a hate group. They're a total hate group. They are a hate group in many, many ways. They are all of that. And like I said, you don't have to agree with me. That's what I really think of them. Okay.
Well, I agree with you. I agree with you. Everything I do agree with you. Yes, I do. Well, thank you, Mark. Thank you. Always good. Yeah. Always good to hear from Mark. Thank you, Mark. All right.
Hey, Rick. Thank you, Rick, and keep on waving that flag, like you say.
Well, thank you.
Waving that flag, buddy.
Well, thank you. Go ahead. Go ahead, man. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I was just you know how everyone was talking about using a scripture and reasoning with your kids. I use that one, foolishness is tied up in the heart of a boy or a girl, I'd add, and the rod of discipline will remove it far from them. And, guess what kind of response I got back from Andrea? She'd quote another scripture and say, fathers, do not be exasperating your children.
Oh yeah, well that's what they do. That's what they do. Yes, good. Hey, good comment. Thank you, Randy. Don't you ever change. You're a good man. Okay, so we're talking here about Japan. We also talked about Norway. These are two countries right now that are coming against the Jehovah's Witnesses. These two countries are looking at Jehovah's Witnesses as an evil. Well, they don't call it a cult, but they know there's something wrong in this organization, so they're investigating all of this. So between the article on Norway and the article here on Japan, friends, this is a Christmas miracle. This is a gift to all of us. Don't you love it when you see countries coming down on the Watchtower? It's just absolutely wonderful. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on, unless we do have one. Okay, let's move on. I got another thought here, Pars. We're going to talk about now just this week, on jw.org, the Watchtower gave their service year report for 2023. So this is their service year report. They just brought it out on November 15th on jw.org. Now, friends, it's a little disappointing, but I know they're lying. So they're going to try to do everything they can to get the numbers up. But on their website, I got the information off of their website. They talk about the various or the following exciting increases, and they announced it on jw.org. They say baptisms during the 2023 service year, 269,517 persons were baptized. All right. I mean, that's a sizable number, I will admit. So they say it's an 85% increase over the 2020 service year. All right. So, but understand the increase over the 2022 service year. But understand the 2022 service year was a COVID Zoom meeting year. There weren't many people getting baptized then. So a lot of the people, I think, waited to get baptized until after COVID, right? So obviously there was an increase, but we'll get into that later. So they say the Bible studies, on average, Bible studies were up 28.5%. Well, if that's what they're saying. Memorial attendance worldwide was 20,461,767, an increase of nearly 4% over last year. The number of regular pioneers increased 5.5%, and the number of auxiliary pioneers increased. Okay, enough of that. But, in the report, what caught my attention, so they said in the land reporting, so 58 lands had all-time peaks. You're saying 58 lands had all-time peaks, the best it's ever been. Does that mean that most of the rest of these lands had decreases? They don't talk about that. So, but here's the thing I want you to bear in mind. Even though they're saying how grandiose it is, how wonderful it is, the organization knowingly lies when it comes to scriptures. We know that. It's what got them in a lot of trouble. So they won't have any qualms about lying on their recruitment statistics. No qualms at all. I seriously doubt that the numbers are accurate. And maybe you're thinking that too. Do you think these numbers are accurate?
Hey, Rick?
Yes, go ahead, Dan.
Rick?
Yes. Oh, Stick, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think they're not accurate at all. They fudge everything, they lie, they deceive, they embellish. But you have to ask yourself, if they have this phenomenal increase like you're alluding to, how come they're selling off Kingdom Halls? They should be building, they should have quick bills going on all over the place, but they don't. They are selling off Kingdom Halls. It doesn't make sense. If that increase is true, then they would be building Kingdom Halls. They wouldn't be selling them off.
Absolutely. Dick, that's just, I was going to say that same thing. Now, if Chevrolet if the Chevrolet department of General Motors came out and said, man, we are selling Chevrolets like never before. All of our Chevrolet products, they're flying off the shelf. People are buying them like crazy, but yet you see them shutting down Chevrolet dealerships. Can you really believe Chevrolet? Could you believe what they're saying? The answer is no. And we have to understand that the Jehovah's Witnesses, the culture of the Watchtower Society is well known. Lying is okay when it's done to further kingdom interests. So by fudging the numbers, by cooking the books, are they furthering kingdom interests? Yes, because who wants to go out and preach for a dying organization? They wouldn't. So if they can lie about scriptures, if they can lie about and call it the war strategy, whatever term they want to use for it, I distrust everything they say now. I don't believe anything the Watchtower says. I'm like a hunting dog. I trust my nose. I trust my nose to sniff out their lies, their subterfuge, their obfuscation, and their spin. Yes, and that's what I'm doing here. I did not passing the smell test to me, just like you said, Dick. You're not going to be selling kingdom halls off if you're growing exponentially. You're going to be building no kingdom halls. There's no kingdom halls being built. So the surge in numbers after COVID-19 isn't surprising. I mean, obviously, maybe, some numbers would increase because of COVID-19 holding everything back. But as far as the baptisms being up that high, I think the numbers are cooked a little bit. But, maybe not. I mean, there wasn't that many people being baptized during COVID. I mean, they didn't have any conventions. They didn't have any assemblies. So if you had to get baptized, you had to be baptized in an elder's bathtub. I mean, would you want to be baptized in an elder's bathtub? Not me. That's for sure. So, I mean, maybe they do have a little increase there, but only time will tell. So on the other hand, let me just throw this into the works. As the Jehovah's Witnesses say, they are growing. Well, let me tell you about the ex-witness world. Well, we are growing. I see unbelievable amounts of people coming into the 6 screens every week. More and more people are coming in. You hear it. You hear the people calling into the program. They're calling in from all over. So I'm going to tell you this. The ex-witness world is growing exponentially. And we're not lying about it. I'm not using war strategy here. Major increases in the PMO people, those that are physically in, mentally out. Oh my goodness, we are seeing unbelievable amount of new ones coming into the 6 screens. Some of these YouTube videos that you watch, they're getting tons of viewers. And there's even one forum online, it's called Reddit. I talk about it here. They have close to 100,000 members. It's growing like crazy. And you say, well, why is the ex-witness, if the regular Jehovah's Witness world is growing like crazy, how is it that the ex-witness worlds are getting bigger? I mean, you have to use your head here. I want you to put your thinking cap on. There are more people leaving now than ever before. I believe the mass exodus has already begun, but the witnesses have to present this feeling of growth, and everything is grandiose and wonderful. But the ex-witness world is growing like it's never grown before. I've been doing this program, like I say, for 18 years. I've never seen it like this. Sometimes I can hardly even get a word in edgewise. There's so many people calling in. And I'm getting emails more than ever. Our YouTube and our Facebook videos are going viral in some cases. I mean, so what's going on with all of that? Hey,
Rick.
Yes, go ahead.
Rick, when you're asking that question, I think that in the time that we're in, I don't know if we're in the last days or not, to be 100% honest with you, because history repeats itself so much. But I definitely do believe that we're in a time that even beyond Jehovah's Witnesses, people are having a spiritual awakening of knowing that there's a higher power, a higher source out there. And I think people, and we're at to look at with the internet and everything that we have today, this separates my generation kind of, is you got YouTube, you got the internet. So there's so much knowledge out there now that, like you said, I think you hit the nail on the head when the virus came out, the epidemic, pandemic, whatever, came out, and people were at home. I mean, not even Jehovah's Witnesses. Everybody was locked at home or whatever. They're on their computers and they're doing research on this and that. And I think anybody that might have been on the fence of their faith, Jehovah's Witnesses or whatever, and might just take a little peek and see what's going on in this. When this world's gotten crazy, maybe there's something else I'm unaware of. And I think there's just a big awakening happening on a big scale of it. And I think the pandemic was the best thing that ever happened as far as for people waking up in the Watchtower and maybe other cults and stuff like that. I don't mean to say people dying. I hope don't take that the wrong way. But I mean, you know what I'm saying is it when people were just stuck on Zoom, you know, they didn't even have to dress up anymore other from maybe the top up so that if they were seen on camera, they could be in a pair of boxers and wearing a jacket and tie, you know, whatever. But I think that the Watchtower is in some serious trouble, because I know today, I was talking to my daughter a couple of days ago, they still use Zoom. They'll still stay home and they'll just get on Zoom to watch the meeting. And so my daughter loves that because she don't have to go to the Kingdom Hall, you know. But I'm just saying, I think they're definitely in a free fall, and they're trying to figure out how to recuperate from this. I think they thought the virus was going to be a good thing for them because they could promote Armageddon. But I think it's all backfired in their face, and they don't know how to come back from it. That's just my thoughts.
Well, those are good thoughts. I believe those thoughts make a lot of sense, Daniel. Thank you. Thank you. Always good to hear from you. And stay tuned. Right after this program, we have Daniel. He's a former Jehovah's Witness from Michigan. And then we have Eric from Tennessee, former Jehovah's Witness. They came together. They got a program coming up next at 9:30, and it's called Awakening After the Watchtower. So they're coming on at 9:30 tonight. Don't miss it. Well, I have to say, it's sad, but I have to bring it up. In India, you know, the convention that was bombed, we remember that about 3 weeks ago, actually 2 weeks ago, today, it's not tomorrow. That India, now there's up to 6 people that have died. The mother of that 12-year-old girl that was burned to death also died. It's a terrible thing. And, you know, we have to feel some feelings for the witnesses. I would never encourage going in and bombing a Kingdom Hall or a convention, but that was unbelievable. And then we got Thanksgiving coming up, right? We got Thanksgiving coming up Thursday. And all of us ex-witnesses, I'm going to have turkey. I'm going to have turkey for dinner. But the Jehovah's Witnesses, they feel so skittish. I just don't understand it all on how they can just put Thanksgiving aside. I mean, they're supposed to love Jehovah and thank Jehovah for their food, but they're not going to do it this Thanksgiving. They won't eat turkey, most of them. Go ahead, 267. You're on with us. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, you're on with us. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I hear everything that's going on. I feel sorry for those people in India. Any religion that gets blown up or something like that, I feel for that. But my issues with, because I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, was always the blood issue. And the fact that so many people have died, and all of a sudden you get into the modern era, and they have changed as far as now you get blood, blood cells and blood fractions.
Well, hold on 1 second. You said the secret word.
I'm sorry.
Sir. You said the secret word. Let me do this. The duck comes down. The duck comes down. You said the secret word. The duck comes down. The duck is going to give you $20. Are you a first-time caller?
Yes, I am.
All right. Well, this duck right here, you said the secret word. The secret word was blood fractions, and you said it. So the duck, we're going to send you $20. So if you would send me your email address, or at least your regular physical address, I can mail that $20 off to you. Could you do that for me?
Oh, it's not a problem. Yes.
You know, send it to jwworldnews@gmail.com, and I'll send you the $20. We have the secret word. We have
Okay.
one every week, but you said it, blood fractions with the secret word. So you won the $20. Thank you, brother.
Oh, thank you. Because I had just chimed in. I mean, just turned it on, and I got a notice that we're on, and I just turned to it. Oh man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the fact that my question is that when you say that it's a cult, it is cultist. It's definitely in there, because my point to a friend of mine who stored Jehovah's Witness was that if you put all your eggs in one basket, and things happen, things migrate to a certain point where things get better, and they still telling you cannot get this, and then something happens to somebody dies, whatever the case may be, but then you go back 20, 30 years later, and they say, oh, well, you can do this, you can do that, but what about the people who died? And I remember Awake magazine when I was a kid, they had so many different children on there, but they would call them martyrs or whatever. It wasn't their decision not to get the blood transfusion. It was their parents. And I, as a person who grew up Jehovah's Witness and baptized and things like that, I think about in the 80s when the AIDS epidemic happened, because Arthur Ashe was not homosexual. He got AIDS through a blood transfusion. And I said to myself, okay, I'll give him that. But when we get more and more into modern technology now, where the fact they can test blood so well, and you still hold on to that. And then what happens is that once publicly Jehovah's Witnesses get caught up in the media and they have to explain certain things, then they lie and say, well, these things never happened. Like, for instance, I knew people who got this fellowship back in the 80s who weren't even witnesses. They weren't even baptized, but they told the Royal Committee they didn't do that. But it happened, because I knew there were people that my congregation were like that. I have been to funerals where people who didn't get blood. My brother just died. He was a minister, and then my sister, who's a pioneer, told my younger brother, who's not a witness, that she wished he wasn't married, because she mentioned my name, because I walked away. So she mentioned my name because if my brother wasn't, the wife has the body on the last say so, but if he wasn't married, he would have got the blood transfusion. It's a person at my job whose father's disfellowship because he's alive. He said, my dad is disfellowship because he allowed me to have the blood transfusion. And it's like, okay, you're alive. So I said, so Jehovah don't love you just as much as the next person. I said, and when the elders, he said the elders gave an example of Jesus, of Jesus, and I was like, when I cut him off, like, Jesus that thing was celestial. That's not on the same level as what we work with.
Yeah. In fact, brother, I'm gonna have you shut the YouTube off in the back. I think it's going on in the background.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
it is going on. I apologize.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, I'm like, that's a celestial thing. That's a thing from heaven. Then they talked about Samson. I said, Samson's mother they gave an example of Samson. I said, well, Samson's mother, an angel came to speak to Samson, his mother, about him, because they was one of the weakest tribes of Judah.
Yeah.
I said, that's unqualified. I said, and the information is unqualified. So,
you have a bone to pick. You have a bone to pick with the Watchtower, like everybody listening to the program. I think you're new listening in, huh?
Yes. I never thought I was going to get put through this. So it's funny that I'm actually talking to you and everyone else. But this channel is great. I don't have any ill feels about Jehovah's Witnesses or things like that, because to each his own. But the fact of the matter is that when you try to, which they say they don't do, but when you try to take family and friends from people, you just don't know what that feels like. They don't know what that feels like.
Well, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, brother. Yeah. Right. Well, I appreciate. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Finish up what you're going to say. Yeah.
No, I'm good. I just want to get the information you said to send to you for the.
You're right to JW World News at gmail.com and give me your physical address, and you win $20.
All right, I'm gonna do that right now. Thank you, man.
We'll do that. We'll send it off to you. Put it in an envelope. It'll take probably a week and a half, but you'll get it. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Well, there you go. He said the secret word. The secret word tonight was, and we still have another secret word. Somebody still might win some money here tonight. So we do have another secret word. We've got about 15 minutes left in the program. So once you call us up tonight, I mean, we've been talking here a lot about a lot of things tonight going on in the behind the curtain of the Watchtower. Yeah, go ahead.
Yep, just a quick thought.
Sure.
You know, the Jehovah's Witnesses are going to have to wake up. I mean, they were told to get the jabs, you know, the Moderna shots and all of them. And now the whole world is finding out that this was a scam by the government and that these shots have taken a lot of people's lives. It's really bad. And I just want to talk about, just for a second, the gorilla in the room. In the mid-1980s, they allowed you to talk to discipleship people. And then they said, no, you can't. That's kind of crazy, because that's mostly coming from Jehovah God. So either Jehovah had it right when the first time prior to 1985 that you should not talk to discipleship people, or Jehovah had it wrong at the end of 1985 saying you could. So it's easy to deduce that Holy Spirit does not run this organization. But there is a spirit that does run the organization, that's for sure. It's the father of the lie, and it's Satan the devil runs Jehovah's Witness organization. Thank you, Rick.
Well, there you go, Dick. Always good to hear from Dick Borgie. But anyways, I'm hoping that many of you who have left the Watchtower and listening into the program, I hope that you're going to have a good Thanksgiving. I know I am. I'm going to have a good Thanksgiving. We're going to cook a turkey. We're going to have cranberry sauce and stuffing and mashed potatoes, and we're going to have a good time. I mean, that's something I never did as a Jehovah's Witness. You know, really, for the most part. I mean, some witnesses, they do. They have turkey dinner and what have you, but Jehovah's Witness organization doesn't really promote it. They don't want you buying turkey for Thanksgiving. You know, some witnesses would have turkey the day afterward. I don't know how you felt about it, but maybe you can tell us if you want to speak up and talk about it. But I know in my family, well, my father was not a witness, so we kind of had it. But many witness families, I know many of them that would not have turkey on Thanksgiving. They would have hot dogs, Franco-American spaghetti or something. And then the next day they'd have the turkey. Isn't that crazy? Why can't a witness celebrate Thanksgiving? There's really nothing about it. I mean, they never really, gave much information about it, but many witnesses will not celebrate it. Go ahead, you're on with us. What do you think? What do you think about Thanksgiving? Go ahead, Daniel.
I was just laughing as you're talking about it because you're exactly right. So the way I grew up with my parents and my siblings is they would buy a turkey, but we would not make it on Thanksgiving. We'd do it the day before, the day after, maybe a couple days after. We'd have all the same food, the stuffing, the everything. You know what I'm saying? But when I got married to a witness girl and her family, we would get together. No, they had a full Thanksgiving meal on Thanksgiving. We'd have the turkey, the stuffing, all that stuff. But what they would say is, we're not celebrating Thanksgiving. We're just enjoying this because this was on sale or whatever. They would have to justify it why we're having turkey on Thanksgiving. We're not celebrating Thanksgiving. And I just sit there and just kind of like the hypocrisy, or you have to justify something, just so you don't feel guilty about what you're about to eat. Because, oh yeah, we're eating turkey on Thanksgiving. It's so ridiculous. It's just that we have to even think that way. That's why it's saddening with kids getting baptized. You need to be a kid. You need to grow up, enjoy your life, be a kid, and not be sucked into so much pressure. I can't imagine a 5-year-old getting baptized, Rick. It's just
I'm Daniel. I love you a lot, buddy. You're a good man. The reason why I like you a lot, and I'll tell you why, is you think like I do. You're very sensible. In other words, just in your comment when you would, go over to the in-laws' house and they had turkey on Thanksgiving. I mean, is it necessary to say, well, we're not celebrating Thanksgiving, but we all went along with it. We all went along with it. I mean, how crazy were we? We should have spoken up and said, well, wait a minute. I don't get this. It's Thanksgiving. There's turkey. So what are you celebrating? It's nuts. It's nuts what the witnesses put us through. Geez, when I look back on it, I say, that was absolutely crazy. How do we follow their dictates? But we did it. But now that we look back, we say, that was nuts, crazy.
Well, what's funny is, Rick, you're going to say prayer before you eat, right?
Yeah.
Are you going to use the word thankful out of it? Because then all of a sudden, that really becomes, you got the turkey, you got the stuffing, you got all this stuff. Now you're going to be thankful. Oh, wait a minute. I think we're celebrating Thanksgiving.
Well, it's the same thing with Christmas. There was some witnesses I know they wouldn't celebrate Christmas, but the next day they had Family Day. I mean, come on. I mean, that I could see through. Like, it wasn't that, it was so easy to see it. It was pathetic. But that's what we all did. We all went along with this malarkey. So what did you guys do on Thanksgiving? Did you have turkey? Did you avoid turkey? I like what Daniel said, that a lot of the witnesses would have turkey on Thanksgiving Day, and they'd say, well, it was on sale, so we have to have it. I mean, that was an excuse they made, too.
Mr. Barron?
Yeah, in fact, we've got, go ahead, Stefan, then we're going to go to New York. Go ahead, Stefan.
Okay, I never celebrated Thanksgiving, so I don't have an answer for that. But I was just thinking, even as I got older, when I was still a witness, but certainly after I left, the older we get, we tend to value life more, because we become aware that we're going to lose things. We're going to lose people. We're going to lose physical ability, and eventually we're going to die. And you just can't help but think about being grateful, and that there's nothing wrong with taking a day to be grateful and to be thankful. And then when COVID hit and so many people died, I don't know a single person that I talked to during COVID that didn't know somebody who died, whether it was somebody in their family, a friend, if a friend of a friend, whatever the case may be, a colleague at work. We were all affected. And so what is wrong with showing appreciation and being thankful just to be alive, to have the measure of health that you have, the standard of living that you have, the friends and family that you have? Thank you.
Well, that's a good thought. Yeah, well, what would be the matter with that? I don't see anything. I do see we have New York. We have, go ahead, 315. I think I know what that is. Go ahead, 315.
Hi, Rick. This is Joe.
I thought it was Joe, yes.
I appreciate the topics, and that gives us all something to think deeply about. If I can go off topic a little bit, and I'm not I'm going to suggest everyone to deeper research on Charles Taylor Russell. He was a Zionist. His family was a member of the Illuminati. This might have been brought up by Fritz a little bit, but his family was a member of the Illuminati, and in his travels, he kind of rubbed elbows with the Rothschilds, especially when Rothschild realized that Russell was speaking to large crowds of Jews, and the goal was to favor the Jews receiving land that really basically wasn't theirs. And that's basically what Zionism is. It's a political movement in order to extort land from others. And his job, Rothschild, gave the assignment to Russell to gather a people together to turn the minds and hearts of Catholics and others similar away from their religions, and to get them to work toward their goal, that the goal of Zionism, that of helping return land to Israel. So any pretense that anybody thinks that they were part of a Christian religion is an absolute fraud and fabrication, all designed to get people to use and exploit individuals like us to basically fit into that political agenda. We were used in the deepest way that you can imagine under the most fraudulent of situations. and that's how they think of us, just simply as basically cannon fodder to get their job done. And they'll do any means, and they've done any means, any kind of fear mongering and stealing families away from their children away from their families. They're ruthless people. They have one goal, and they've ruined several generations of people only for their evil purposes. So if people want to find out the reason why we did what we did, just look up Charles Taze Russell, Zionist, and you'll see how even Netanyahu, the recent prime minister of Israel, has very, very high regard for him. And basically he feels that Russell has not been given enough praise and reward for what he's done. We fit into that agenda. That's all I'm going to say right now. Thanks.
Well, thank you. Well said, Joe. No, really a lot of information there, and really I thank you for sharing it with us. Well, you're on 6 Screens JW World News. We had some more callers that wanted to call in. You're in with us right now. I believe we have 580. You're on with us. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to the turkey thing.
Yeah.
Being raised in the organization, we never had a turkey at all, ever. Any time of year, for any reason whatsoever, never had a roasted turkey in my life until I left the organization as in my late teens, and actually cooked one the first time after I left. I had to look up a recipe, didn't even know how to cook one. But I decided that for Thanksgiving, my first year out, I was going to make one.
Don't do that.
And I couldn't believe it. It was like turkeys were taboo. You know, we couldn't have a turkey at all.
So your family was extreme, Denise. I mean, they look at turkey as some type of a pagan symbol or something, right? Jeez.
Yeah, and I never really figured that out. I knew other people were having turkeys for Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever, but we never got to have one at all, ever.
Well, now you can have one. So you're going to do one this Thursday, Denise? You going to do a turkey?
Yeah, I cooked one last week already because, man, I love turkey. I love turkey.
Boy, you gotta love turkey. Did you do stuffing and the whole thing or what?
Well, the first Thanksgiving that I did, I made everything: cranberry sauce, pumpkin pie, stuffing, you name it, man. I went all overboard the first time I did a Thanksgiving. Yeah, it was awesome. Loved it.
Oh, good.
It was so good. Oh man.
Hey, you gotta love turkey. You got to love turkey. It's so good. Well, Denise. Oh, thank you, Denise. You're a fine young lady. Now, don't you be a stranger. You come back and see us again, okay?
Yep, sure will. Thanks, Rick.
All right. Okay, we got Thomas Hodgins. Thomas, I'm going to unmute you. I want to hear what Thomas has to say. I think it's about Thanksgiving. Thomas, you're on with us. What's up, Thomas?
Oh, yeah, it really sounds good. I'm excited about the possibility of having XKW convention get-together. That would be nice. I would really like that very, very much.
Well, now you're over there in Lawrence, Kansas. So how far are you from Chicago? Yeah. How far are you from Chicago, Thomas?
It's about a 9-hour drive, 9.5 hours.
So you could do it. You could do it like in a day.
Yeah.
What's it, about 700-800 miles? Yeah. So
it wouldn't be too bad. It would be really nice.
Wouldn't that be nice, Thomas? I'd love to meet you in person and all the ex-witness people we could meet there.
Yeah.
So that's great.
I would love that.
So we're still alive in 25. That's our theme. And we're looking at perhaps Chicago. We're looking at Chicago. But if anyone has any ideas for a convention center or where it might be best, write me. We're starting to put we're putting our gear. Well, our gears are turning here. We're putting some things together. So whatever you think, let me know. Write me at jwworldnews@gmail.com. Tell me Would you like to come? You don't have to make a commitment, but I just want to see how many people would be interested in an ex-witness convention, the first of its type. It'd be wonderful. I think you'd be there, Thomas. I really love to meet you in person. It looks like
Me too.
It looks like 540. I think that is Miss Pixie. Hello, Miss Pixie.
I'm doing great. I think Chicago would be a good place, and we could have a catered turkey dinner for everybody. That would not be expensive to do. I want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving there in Boston from Virginia, because the 13 colonies were all about it. Some of my family was in 1620, and some of my other family were Cherokee Indians, and we always had Thanksgiving, even though we were witnesses. And in California, they always had turkey too.
Wow,
So
this is
wonderful food.
Well, this is where Thanksgiving Day all started, right up here in Boston, in Plymouth, Massachusetts. So it's interesting. I don't know if history has it all right, but I'll go along with it to some degree. So do you think you might attend that convention if we had one in 2025, Pixie?
I think Chicago's an airport hub. That'd be a good place for it, and good food there, and probably get a good hotel rate and everything. That'd be fun.
Well, I'd love to meet you there, Pixie. I really, really would. Would love to meet Miss Pixie. Yes, thank you, Pixie, for calling in. Thank you. All right. Well, let's see what's going on here. Well, it's 9:30. It's time for a new program that's going to be debuting here on the Six Screens Telenetwork. We have got a program called, it's called Awakening After the Watchtower. Now, you heard Daniel. Daniel was just on. He calls in from Michigan. And we got Eric calling in from Tennessee. So they're going to be doing the program. So we're looking forward to that. So, friends, I have to tell you, I am so glad. I'm so happy. A lot of things are happening in the Jehovah's Witness world. They are tanking. They are tanking. And I love it. I really, really do. Don't you feel good? Now, listen, I'm not trying to rub it in here, but I feel good. This organization has hurt so many people, including you listening in here today. There's people listening to this program tonight that are being shunned. No one's talking to them. They're lonely. Their friends have committed suicide. You don't know what to do, but you're listening to the Six Screens, and thank you for coming in. I hope this program can help you. I hope it can help you. I hope it can help you connect with people that are like sort, because we've all been touched by the tentacles of the Watchtower. Well, anyways, we do have Six Screens Sunday coming up tomorrow, and we've got some great programs. Now, on Sunday, we get into theological discussion. We don't do it on Saturday night. We don't preach on Saturday night. But if you're a person that loves the scriptures and you want to learn more about how the Watchtower is wrong on their theology, well, by all means, tomorrow's the day to do it. So why don't you come in tomorrow and be with us on Six Screens Sunday, starting at 1 o'clock tomorrow. We have a program, Knowing God After Leaving the Watchtower. We have 2 Christian apologists that will be coming on and doing the program. And then at 2 o'clock, we have a program, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses share their Christian testimony or share their spiritual testimony. Well, what do you do for spirituality when you leave the Watchtower? Well, we'll discuss that tomorrow. And then at 2 o'clock, or 3 o'clock, I should say, we do JW World News Sunday edition. You don't want to miss that. And then, of course, the Christian Court. Wow, what a program that is. That comes up at 4 o'clock tomorrow. A former Jehovah's Witness, Jay Hess, he at one time was associated with the writing department. He is a Bible scholar, along with Scott Walton out of North Carolina. And we have a program called the Christian Court. And we have peculiar Christian questions that they answer. Don't miss that program. It's gaining a lot of traction. And then at 5 o'clock, if you have Bible questions, Jay Hess, once again, he's the man that can do it. He comes on at 5, beginning at 5 o'clock tomorrow night, right here on the Six Screens Telenetwork. All right, so we got that in. Now listen, do you like the program tonight? Did you like what you heard here? I liked it. I'm sitting back enjoying all the people calling in and talking. Why don't you like us on Facebook? Why don't you subscribe on YouTube? Friends, we're trying to reach people. We're trying to reach people. We're trying to get people out of that dumb religion and come to grips with real life. Help us. Subscribe, like us, share us, do what you can, but get the word out that we do this every Saturday night, and we've been doing it for 18 years. Well, I have to say, thank you for listening in. And the last one, leaving the Watchtower, please turn off the new light. Watchtower, our program, What is Life Like? Awakening After the Watchtower, coming up next with Eric and Daniel. Thank you for joining us tonight. We will be up next with Daniel and Eric.